Wow, the world I've created for my books is so advanced and intricate. I've got everything mapped out. The magic system is so technical and precise. The nations all have individual governments and political figures that long to kill each other in violent ways. The geography of the world is laid out in amazing detail down to the last pebble. It's also huge and easy for readers to get lost in.
That's amazing, Donald. I'd love to learn the details about this world. Are you working on the giant, door-stopping encyclopedia that explains everything about your world for those wanting to learn more than what's revealed in the actual books?
Well, you see, I don't have that much time to, write this encyclopedia.
You don't? But you had time to map out the world.
You know how it is. You spend so much time with all the details and other things about the world that All right, you call my bluff, David. My world is bare bones. It has the depth of a piece of toilet paper.
Not even 2-ply?
Not even 2-ply. But I sure would love to have that kind of giant encyclopedia for it.
You have to put the work in for it, then. Tolkien labored on every nook and cranny of Middle-earth for his entire life. There's no way you can just have your encyclopedia appear out of nowhere, fully laid out and intricately explaining every last detail of your world.
I suppose you're right. We writers need to figure out how to balance creative work with our real-world obligations, and really spend the time mapping it out ourselves in every...
Whoa, wait a second! There is a way!
What? Can it be?
We at the Ritwit this week are proudly sponsored by the World Building Encyclopedia Generator, the setting device highly sought after by aspiring fantasy writers. Do you have the bare essentials of a world in mind, but are spending too much time with your family or trying to make money from a real job? Just insert whatever minimal details you have into the World Building Encyclopedia Generator. Then turn the knobs on the side for how much precise detail you would like. Once you're ready, press the big red button and presto! A World Building Encyclopedia is pooped out of the machine, all shiny and ready to go, just for you and your readers.
Wow, that sounds amazing! Finally, I can make an advanced Silmarillion-esque world without actually putting any time or effort into it. That's exactly what Tolkien would have always wanted.
Absolutely. Call our toll-free number and get your World Building Encyclopedia Generator today. Now you, dear listeners, can have your own world to stand amongst the greats of literature past.
You know, I've noticed we've sold a lot of products in these ads that take away the creative agency from writers and have a soulless machine pop it out instead, discouraging people from putting actual time and effort into their projects and making them expect quick, unearned results.
Yes, and...
And it's great! I love it! Writing is easy now!
Yes, it is, Donald.
Welcome, fellow nerds, to another episode of The Ritwit, the show one parasynthetic adjective away from being officially half-assed.
Isn't it just?
Isn't it just? I had to look up parasynthetic adjectives, by the way. I was looking up grammar terms that I could riff on for the intro, and I'm like, oh, well, that works.
Good grief. Welcome back, listeners. We're here with a new set.
Yes, we are. And this is... one of the, every episode or every show likes to have their very special episode. And I guess we already had one where we talked about grief back in episode 43.
That's true. For those of you who haven't listened, go do that.
I was going to say, it feels a little weird to give that one a cheap plug. It's like, because it's just, I don't know. So
ding?
Yeah, not ding like we don't remember, just like ding. This is a very
sure
serious, yeah, like, I don't know. We're capitalizing on your father and my bird's death. That's what
yeah, well, we were in the same room, at least. That was kind of nice, but anyway.
I feel really bad. I'm going to say this way later, like almost 100 episodes later, but listening back to that episode, while I do like it, it does make me seem kind of pathetic that I get so sad about my bird dying. One thing I forgot to mention, birds like that help with my depression. They're service animals. So,
yep.
Anyways, in case anyone's wondering.
Yeah, and in case you're wondering about that, we have a topic coming up in a couple weeks maybe that may allude to that more. So
and also I have a new bird
stay
now
tuned.
who's great. So anyways,
Anyway.
but enough of that. We'll get to our sets. And by the way, we'll try and keep it still lighthearted and because it's us.
But as you can tell from the title, it's going to get literally heavy.
All right, cool. But before then, well, what will we rip off from this month? You get to go first, David.
Hey, all right. Well, I've been rereading Lord of the Rings after dusting off a box set with 3 bound volumes plus The Hobbit not too long ago.
Oh, man.
I did The Hobbit first. I might have mentioned that on the show. I don't remember. I love how prevalent the use of lyric is during their adventures, and would love to rip that off. Maybe not so much the exorbitant use of diacritics, particularly in the Elven language, since I'm not clear on how they're supposed to alter pronunciation, but they're simply there.
Question for stupid people. I mean, what's a diacritic?
So a diacritic would be like an accent or a tilde or
An
umlaut.
Yeah, those things.
Those things.
Whenever you do the special characters thing on Word.
And they're called diacritics because in some languages they are expected, but the Elvish language... I mean, I'm sure Tolkien had a reason for it, but they're just kind of there. I'm not sure how it's supposed to work. Does the umlaut actually work the same way as an umlaut in German? Probably not.
I mean, it's based off of like the kind of mythology up there, so it would make sense, I guess.
Anyhow, there's that on Lord of the Rings for sure.
Yeah.
But on other lines, I finally sat down and finished the show Glee.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I loved it, but that's your mileage may vary.
Yeah, I know, and I've never liked Glee, but I shouldn't make fun of you for it.
I racked my brain to find situations that could be considered akin to that setting, where different walks of life are coming together,
yes.
having the gall to tackle major societal issues within a student body. Not that a body of students is necessary per se.
Right.
Showcase a ton of characters challenging their identity and growing because of who they cooperated with.
That is the goal, you'd like to think, of cooperating with people.
And I just can't find too many equivalent scenarios. Particularly when you go to college and you've decided to major, you're generally taking classes with those people. When you get into the business, you're all in the business because of theoretically what you do,
right?
Whether it's just to support your family or whatever, and so all of these different walks of life thing, the cesspool of different culture stuffs, you're most likely to get in school. So I can't really find an equivalent situation. I'm very sad that the ride ended because with such a setup, it could have been eternally evergreen, new people coming in, old people graduating.
Yeah, I was
going to
say, it's in school, so it'd have to be new characters a lot of the time.
But
it'd be like a soap opera,
Well, true. And they had to make some endpoint. And the way they tributed the show seemed a pretty fitting end cap.
Okay.
Another aspect I love that pervaded the whole show, of course, was the willingness to use several different styles of music.
That is
something
nice.
that I struggle with even though I have formal training. The life lessons to be gleaned from some singer's album release. A certain genre of songs. And appropriate for the show Glee, the idea of combining things and trying to make it something new. I can't deny being a Gleek now.
Oh, man. We lost you too. Oh, no, it's fine.
I'd love to write something so communal in the sense that despite the various goals and personalities, that being involved makes all of them benefit from being together.
That is nice. So,
but without simply aping Glee, I'm not sure how best to manage, so I'll have to keep thinking about that one.
I'm sure you'll find one. I mean, that's usually a standard for a lot of stories, like to have your found family that you over a bunch of different people who come together. Like one of my favorite shows, Community, does that really well with the study group. That's fine. There was one episode of Community that really riffed on Glee.
Also School, by the way.
Yes, it is. It was one that really riffed on Glee, though, and it was...
And because he doesn't like Glee, I'm sure he enjoyed the riffing on it.
Look, it's fine. I'm not going to get on to you. You don't get on to me too much for liking Avatar, so I'm not going to get on to you too much for liking Glee. Anyways.
How about you, Donald?
So, I've wanted to make further use of my HBO Max subscription. Since Godzilla vs. Kong has premiered, it's been 30 days, and so the streaming window is over.
Darn.
And now I have to wait until it comes out in home media for it to return. So I decided to give Guy Ritchie's King Arthur, The Legend of the Sword from a few years ago a watch. Yeah, it was good. It was really good. I really liked it. My college English professor loved this movie, and critics hated it, so it sounds like a winner to me. So, thankfully, it was. It's by far the most sword and sorcery version of the King Arthur story I've ever seen, even more than the Merlin show.
Fair enough.
And also, Katie McGrath has a brief role in this, probably as an in-joke.
Is she getting typecast? No.
I think she might be.
Nah, because she's also in the show Supergirl as a character.
Yeah. Did you know she's naturally blonde?
No, I had no idea.
Because she always plays dark-haired roles. So...
Hey, there you go.
She's gorgeous. Anyways.
But back to Guy Ritchie's version.
Oh man, I know. I kind of want to just talk about Merlin now. Just talking about
More expressly, Katie McGrath.
She's so good. Anyways, there are magical elephants the size of mountains.
Wow. Somebody stole from the Mumakil.
Well, they're even bigger than the Mumakil, man. Like a dark dimension of creatures and monsters, a group of creepy octopus women underneath Camelot, and a climactic battle that really reminded me of the Dark Souls games.
Have you played those?
I've watched clips of them. I don't
okay.
have the courage. Those games are notorious for being intentionally incredibly difficult.
Fair enough.
I don't have time for that.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
I want instant satisfaction.
This is why we have the world-building encyclopedia generator.
Although I will admit, with a Monster Hunter, one thing I did like about that is every time I get stuck and I have to figure out a way to fight the monster, by the time I finally beat the monster, it was so satisfying. I get that's the way that they do with Dark Souls, but anyways. But you have to really commit. Anyways, if I were ever to do a full-on fantasy story, I think a sword and sorcery one like this would be cool, and that's how I'd like to rip it off. None of this hard magic system BS, which is a lot of people really like. So I'm just kind of like playing Fast and
I'm familiar with hard science, though not hard magic, so you may have to explain that to me off air sometime.
Just a magic system with very, very clear rules, which is fine. I'm fine with that. Like, I don't have a problem with that. It's just sometimes it's just like, there's just magic. It
takes some of the fantasy out of being magical if you always have to follow a certain set of rules. I can't cast a spell in this particular circumstance because,
Here's the best way I think for me to describe hard magic systems. Imagine if Christopher Nolan did a fantasy movie, and you've got a really good idea.
Make it really cerebral.
Cerebral and just very rule-oriented. If you ever seen Inception or Tenet.
Not that I have.
Yeah. Anyways, I think but there are two things to know about this movie, though. One, it's funny that Guy Ritchie has done both King Arthur and Sherlock Holmes movies.
That's true.
He just needs to do Robin Hood and James Bond to complete his British legendary heroes catalog.
Good Lord.
I was considering putting Doctor Who on here, but the character of Doctor Who is not British. Like, the show is British.
Right, the show is
and
produced
the
by
Doctor,
BBC.
I'm sorry. Not the Doctor Who, I know.
The Doctor Who?
Just the Doctor, I get it. Calm down, Whovians.
Don't send us hate mail. But if you do and you want us to share it, we'll tell you how to get in touch with us at the end of the episode.
It's just like that whole... I know that Zelda is the main character of the Legend of Zelda games. I know that.
Totally.
Yeah, that's Zelda with his sword and green tunic. Hi, Zelda. Look at Zelda go. I get it.
I'm not so sure you do.
Also, another thing to note, I've known this ever since Pacific Rim, but I have such a man crush on Charlie Hunnam, the guy who plays Arthur in this version.
I was wondering how that tied in. Okay.
He is a gorgeous man. Like, oh man. It actually made me question my sexuality for a second.
And for more,
we're
almost there.
But apparently he did 1,000 push-ups a day to keep in shape when filming this movie. Holy crap. I'll stick to being a portly nerd, thanks.
For what it's worth, I mean, depending on how deep you go with a push-up, that it's not necessarily that hard to do 1,000. Like, if you look at those ones that they're all like cranking out 1, 2, 3, and they're barely like.
I know, but to do
but
it consistently.
Even so, 1,000 a day is a big deal. But anyway.
Oh man.
And with that, lovely.
So speaking of
setup out of the way
of us questioning our own sexuality,
this episode where we talk about gender identity and sexuality, inclusivity in your stories. Probably a couple of helpful disclaimers to note. Obviously, we are white, identify as straight, so there is that.
And we're male.
But other thing is that there's a whole lot more that we could talk about, so we're going to try and keep this relatively lighthearted, relatively brief.
Right. But
there's more to the story.
Yes, but in today's global world, the sheer diversity of people becomes more apparent by the day. People are realizing the differences in gender and sex, the vast diagram of sexual preferences, and the number of different and new ways to define ourselves. It can be overwhelming, and naturally there are people who reject all this and call people pushing for inclusivity woke or SJW.
Social justice warrior, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Trying in vain to brush it all aside and go back to their comfortable, privileged lifestyle, but we need to grow. We need to understand, and one way writers can help with this is inclusivity.
Mm-hmm.
people like seeing or reading about people like them. And this is true of all the topics we're going to talk about this set.
Yep.
And with all the different people in the world, that can seem daunting, especially since you want to make sure you do it right. Now, as you said, we at the Wit are two straight white males, so we recognize that we come from a place of privilege, but we're both trying to understand and empathize.
Mm-hmm.
And so how can writers like us aid in areas like this?
Sadly, there is no substitute for experience. So if you're like us and can't draw on that direct experience, talk to people who have. In the process, you'll learn about the struggles they face, the stereotypes they have to combat, and maybe even how better to accept them personally. Particularly with question of identity, seeing someone like yourself on the page or the screen is liberating. That's the first step, and the pre-step of acknowledging that your experience is basically unique.
Right.
Once we're there collectively, the second step is normalizing it. That's where
Right.
your friends and acquaintances come in.
Yes.
We have a mission to fulfill when it comes to making sure we don't falsely represent an entire group of people that share this earth with us.
Right.
So pound the pavement, haunt the inboxes of those who can better educate you, and figure out why they are different from what you're accustomed to. Only then can we truly make the impact we want when presenting characters without our own identities.
When I first moved in to this house in college with a bunch of roommates, one of the people, actually no, she came in later, but at the time she was a he, and I knew her as a he, and only when she started hanging out with us and I asked her if she wanted to move in with us, there was an opening, did she reveal that she is transgender and she hasn't gone through the process yet, but she is planning on it. And then through her, I have learned so much about transsexuality and what they have to go through, and it sucks.
Yes.
Like
It's not easy deciding when, if, you know,
and
what
you
to
get
do with
so
that.
much judgment from people who are like, "Why would you want to do that? Like, God doesn't make mistakes." I'm like, "Well, hopefully you don't wear glasses then, because God doesn't make a mistake. Don't occur, like, don't use a condom."
Oh, Lord, we just went there. Okay.
But in the Western world of media, most media is full of straight white men, but there are so many more types of audiences out there. And as writers, we can show not just one demographic, but many different demographics and portray them in a positive light.
I think that when you say media is full of straight white men, the people
characters
making the films are predominantly straight white men.
Yes.
Maybe even on screen there's a preponderance of those, but there are some, particularly in recent times, that are getting there.
Yes.
We're
they
seeing
are.
more LGBT characters in films
And
on pages.
we're seeing more diversity both in front of and behind the camera too. It's still
which is great.
Yes, it is
It's
great.
progress.
It is very good progress. But so people are more accepting of others if they see them in works they like and recognize that, hey, these are people too, and good people even.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I worked back in the famous coffee shop that I guess I'll name, but I don't have to now because I don't
You
work
don't
there
work there anymore.
I don't work there anymore, so I can do it, and I'm not going to for non-legal reasons. Not that it's illegal. Anyways, I worked there around the time Moana came out, and this one girl who was Pacific Islander, she was so excited when that came out. Like, she loved Moana, and that was so cool. So,
Yeah.
But one thing that's becoming a trend I like to see is the presence of more female main characters in genres beyond what they used to be. Like originally, even like as recently as like the early 2000s, most of the works with female main characters would be chick flicks, and like as if only girls could enjoy girls.
Oh, yeah.
While everyone could enjoy guys was the thinking, which is
Apparently.
it's a harmful stereotype that's thankfully been broken more and more as time goes on, with main characters like Captain Marvel, Black Widow, Katniss Everdeen from Hunger Games, Claire Deering from Jurassic World, and yes, Rey from The Force Awakens.
Aha.
And now, of course, you got some people whining that any female character with a proactive role is a Mary Sue or some other woke SJW other buzzword nonsense. But that's just because they're threatened by other people than white men being proactive, so ignore them. Now, I know I have said in the past, and I still believe this, that Rey is a Mary Sue. None of the others are, I don't think. And thanks to these dumb internet people, they've ruined the term Mary Sue. Have you seen this? If you go to remember when we did that quiz on Mary Sue's in that one episode we talked about Mary Sue's?
Yeah.
If you go to that website now, it says this exact thing too. Like, people have ruined the term Mary Sue. because it's been used as like a buzzword now to describe any female character that's proactive, and that's not what it means. But since
That's not what it means at all.
no, so I'm retiring the word from future use, from further use on this podcast.
What? You mean I can't use it?
I mean,
Any other guest
from
co-hosts?
my end.
Okay. Whew! Safe.
Ray is no longer a Mary Sue. She's simply a poorly written character. And to be fair, in my opinion, everyone in that trilogy is poorly written, so it's not particularly a Ray thing. But also, Captain Marvel is awesome, and Brie Larson is awesome. What do you think about that, huh?
All right. We're appeasing the... No, I'm kidding. Anyway.
But with both sexuality and gender identity, the lines blur more as we discover things about ourselves. What is the most crucial difference between the two and how you portray a character on your page?
Differing sexuality is likely easier to portray than gender identity because to each individual,
Right.
it's, well, individual.
That's true.
I was reading recently about a player in the WNBA, the Women's NBA Basketball League, who is AFAB, assigned female at birth, the opposite of that, of course, AMAB, but now insists on different pronouns as he wishes.
Right.
Sometimes it's they, others it's her,
Yes.
even him. While it's terribly confusing to keep track,
Yeah.
and by the way, major props to the article's author for that piece and doing it justice.
Right, nice.
It's terribly confusing to keep track sometimes because the neat little boxes we try shoving all individuals into don't always match what they feel, how they believe their bodies should look to the outside world. Unless your character is in the middle of their coming out story, their sexuality is probably consistent, whereas the other would be far more fluid.
Right.
We have to try and empathize with the character, even if it's a bit more mind-boggling to track which pronouns they use in that moment and why.
That's true. I admit, I don't really understand when people who look feminine to me say on a badge or pin that they identify as they, them. But I recognize that they understand it.
Yep.
And it's not my place to judge, only to respect. I think it might be just because they feel like going by he or she confines them to certain specific stereotypes that they want to break free of.
Right.
But I don't know. You're better off asking them in a respectful manner, of course.
Yeah.
But in a nutshell, as far as I know, the difference between gender identity and sexuality is gender identity is how people designate themselves, and sexuality is how people designate the people they want to pork.
We've already talked about you shouldn't use condoms, and now we're talking about porking. I've got a fun joke that's coming up that'll be another one. It'll be like, kids, listen to this with an open mind, maybe with your parents along.
But anyways, yeah, it's blunt, but whatever. And there's more to it, of course. But in terms of writing, I think having a character go by certain pronouns and have certain love interests, that suffices in just letting your readers know who this person is. Like, unless your story's a romance, most characters aren't defined by who they're sexually attracted to anyway. And now you run into the risk a lot of works do where you say someone is queer, for instance, but you never show it.
Right.
As if you want the points for being inclusive, but you're afraid of the pushback from more bigoted audiences.
Queer coding. We'll get to that, I think.
Yeah, don't do that. Like, if your story's not romance and you have queer characters, you can still show it, even if it's not the character's focus. It's not your problem if some people are bigots and don't accept your work. It's theirs.
I have a feeling the best way to say this is it should be a characteristic, not the characteristic.
Well, like in my Megazoic books, buy on Amazon.com. Spoiler alert for The Hunted Ones, the third one.
So read the first two beforehand, I guess.
Yeah, ding ding.
Just make it a boxing bell. Ding, 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 ding.
Now I'm going to have to add that in. But
No, just leave my sound effect for that.
But the thing is, I'm going to add in because I know that'd be funny. And for the sake of humor, it's just the rule of funny. I like the rule of cool. This is the rule of funny. But anyways, but Anra, she's one of the main characters of that one and the first one, and she is revealed to be lesbian. But there's a lot more to her than being lesbian. Now, I probably could have done better with her girlfriend. There's not really much more to her. Although I guess she is a communication specialist and has a lot of nicknames for people, and that's something. But she's not as fully developed of a character as.
Well, and she only shows up in the third book for the first time.
Yeah, exactly.
So you don't have as much space page-wise to develop her as you did Anra previously.
Right, but I do try to do a little bit. But I probably could have done better. But we'll find out for yourself.
Let us
listener.
know and
Yeah.
send an email and tell him
But
how he
like,
did.
but even then, I still like I specify they are in a relationship. They hold each other's hands. In the fourth book, spoiler alert again, they're married. So And these books are not
And
romance.
This is dinosaur times, man. How very, very forthright of you.
I know.
Progressive and all that.
Man. but yeah, basically that's the point. Yeah, those aren't romance books, but I still found a way to fit it in. So, and yeah, so. But why would having this form of representation be vital to any work set in modern day Earth? Or bonus, does it have add any narrative potency to include this in a past time period?
There are over 7.5 billion people on the planet.
Yes.
And despite how small the percentages may sound, that adds up to a whopping number of people who aren't you, or particularly like you in any way. To ignore that reality and focus only on the types of people closest to you in these ways is lazy and inexcusable in today's modern society.
Right.
Exactly. Come for the wits, stay for the hot takes. As to the bonus point, yeah, there's extra tension there because the attitudes were not as accepting or open, leading those struggling with it to hide things, omit certain truths, or flat out ignore their feelings in the hope that they don't rock the boat.
Right.
That's definitely a major character point.
It is, and they didn't want to, of course, like, back when the church was bigoted, like certain like big empires of churches back then would have been like, no, you're not gay. We're gonna whip that out of you, right?
We're gonna have reconversion therapy, basically.
Right.
Also, the advent of groups so vocal about their struggles in today's society means that unless you live under a rock, no, I'm not talking about Patrick Starr, you could easily find a place to talk with people and try understanding the finer points of their gender identity or sexuality. To bring in the quote I was referencing earlier, I remember overhearing at a dance in college one year.
Yeah.
One of my acquaintances said, "Everybody loves boobs. Gay men love boobs. Straight women love boobs."
Look, we don't have a lot of time for tangents here, but there's really no better place for me to say this, and I've always wanted to say this.
Oh, no.
There's a related note. There is no group of people that loves penises more than straight men. Think about it. Like, who is making all the penis jokes? When you see someone graffiti a penis on a wall, who drew it? Whenever there's like a level editor or a creature editor in Spore, who makes the penis-shaped ones?
To be fair...
We love penises!
To be fair, I think a lot of it in the straight men case is not necessarily fantasizing over someone else's.
No,
which is the
we
difference.
love the idea of a big fat cock. like, we love it. It's like a patriarchal sort of thing.
It is a symbol of a male-dominated society.
Yes,
because
so
they are responsible for leading the charge into the next generation. But there are actually societies where that's not true.
No, I know,
but anyway,
I've had that observation for a while, and it's just,
and you finally had the perfect place to just
yeah
thrust into the conversation.
Oh God, thrust the cock, yes.
But back to the question.
Yes. Okay.
Which is, why is this form of representation so vital?
Well, because people are diverse. In today's global society and the era of the World Wide Web, we're becoming more open than ever about how we feel and who we are. In the modern day, you really don't have an excuse. Although, I suppose you could bypass it by having a straightforward story without any romance or no hints of romantic tension from any of the characters. But that's also kind of a cop-out, and again, ignores people who might be non-binary or transgender. I haven't seen any of the John Wick movies, but I know in the last one I think it was the last one, there is a really cool non-binary character, and it's really good representation. It's still at the point where it's kind of token, but
yeah,
it's progress.
Right.
So you can include these people too. Like nothing's stopping you. In terms of books in past time periods, if it's fantasy, I don't think it's an issue. Be as modern with gender and sexual identity as you think the world would allow. If it's like a more realistic medieval society like Game of Thrones or
they're
Lord of the
going to be
Rings,
closeted about it. There's no way they're going to be so brazen and open.
But that's your choice for that world, that you wanted it to be that medieval. You can decide not to be. So be postmodern if you want, even.
What is that, steampunk? No.
Well, no. But in historical time periods, it can be trickier. Queer and non-binary people absolutely existed back then. Hell, Leonardo da Vinci was gay, and he was from the 15th and 16th centuries.
There are several other notable people who were, and just, I mean, we have documentation, a lot
Greeks.
of speculation,
Yeah.
but no confirmation because it wasn't accepted widely
Right.
at the time.
But they were always forced to suppress it. Like, and non-binary people, for instance, would be forced into gender roles by their parents and their society. That doesn't mean you can't have these characters, but you have to handle it more delicately, and they can't be open and proud about it like in the modern day, because they'd probably be hung or
Burn the witch. That's a very, very bad joke, by the way.
Yes, it is, but we'll let it slide. Here,
Or you could just bleep the whole thing out.
or I might just edit it out. Or leave it there for the world to see, to shame. Nah. We'll see what I do, anyways. Pretending the prejudices of the time never happened is problematic at best.
And way worse than that most of the time, yes.
Yeah. But what are some experiences we can use to relate and empathize with different sexual and gender identities, and how can we use those in our writing?
Being a guy that loved music, inevitably several people have accused me of being gay. And yes, I do mean accused.
Yes.
Just because I mainly hung around with other guys, made music, planned to go on into the arts field, etc. One time I went to an event called Summer Harmony Camp, and a camper there asked me the question in a conversation we had once camp had ended. I got extremely defensive right away, blasting him for having the gall to ask me such a question.
Oh, God.
Turns out that camper was gay. And my reaction to his honest question was more than excessive.
Right.
We made up okay, but that experience will color everything into the future when or if someone asks me about being LGBTQ+.
Right. That's true. That's good. Good you learn from your experiences. So.
And, because I was involved in music organizations, I have certainly known a lot of gay people.
Yes.
College, too. I've seen a bunch of praise online for certain coming out arcs and stuff in media. To be fair, a lot of them I haven't witnessed myself. But one of those that I do agree with is how the character Alex Danvers is handled in Supergirl.
Oh, elaborate.
In one of those fun life imitates art things, the actress later came out as queer.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because they realized that the character's coming out arc spoke so deeply to them. I haven't seen as much regarding gender identity on screen in my own watches, since tokusatsu at its core is aimed at prepubescent boys, so that gets a bit over their heads.
Right.
Not that it stops the fans from queer coding or shipping to the nth degree.
Right.
Fun fact, though, recently they had a character who was non-binary.
Oh, nice.
In tokusatsu.
Cool.
The reason was that the portrayer of the character, I'm trying to find the right pronouns, it's kind of awkward.
Yeah.
The portrayer of this character is NB.
Oh, right.
And so
could say
production team also made the character reflect that too.
Right. You could say actor, too, because I think most people
Female,
say...
but yeah,
Yeah,
actor
for
is
female-
is
for-
gender specific, gender neutral.
Yeah, so, but yeah.
Of the two. Anyway,
Yeah, I don't think people say actress as much anymore, because it separates it more. But I don't know, we'll see.
anyhow,
Anyways,
far as using the experiences of someone who identifies elseways than you can only write what you know. If you don't, talk to someone.
yes.
We must ensure to faithfully report all of it, the personal victories, the social battle for acceptance, the wrestling between feeling one way and looking different.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
All of it's part of that experience.
It is. And it can be a tough conversation to have, but I don't know. I think they'll like it that you're trying to understand, so...
And they'll be, depending on who you know, they'll probably also, gently course correct you if they can.
Right.
If it's not already published.
As long as they recognize that you have good intentions.
You're being sincere.
Yes.
You're not doing it to pastiche them.
Right. As I've mentioned on the show once before, I'm mildly asexual. Therefore, I've joked before, this gets me a foot in a lot of doors. Okay. I'm still attracted to girls even without much of a sex drive, so I'm technically straight. And as a white male, I get all those privileges.
So you're not aromantic.
No, I'm definitely not aromantic. But also, since I am mildly asexual, I'm technically LGBTQ plus as well. So I get invited to all the best parties.
Whoa!
Win-win!
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, this is probably super offensive. Point is, though...
For those of you still listening.
Point is, though, I know how it feels to be different. I think there's something wrong with you when there isn't. I've had people tell me that I'm not asexual at all. It's just my medication that's diluting my sex drive. And those people, I'm sure those people mean well, but really I have no desire for sex unless it's someone I really, really care for and connect with. So, and I've never really had a desire for it. That can't just be a medication thing. So yeah, I can use the experiences I feel when being told, oh no, you must be mistaken, you're perfectly normal. And thus I can get into the head of characters with similar experiences. That's what I do anyway.
You haven't found the right one. I'm sure you've heard that phrase over 1 million times. We wanted to do something with all of these episodes because there's a whole lot of literature out there for those of us who are less familiar, want to know more, trying to represent these characters in your stories. And so...
yes, and again, we're as straight white males, we don't have as much, we don't know as much. So we need to offer resources from people who do.
Right.
While also giving our own insight, you know. Cause that's
as much insight as we can.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple of places that we did find some good articles.
And all of these will be in the episode description, too.
As best we can. I know some of the URLs... Well, we'll see. Hopefully we can cut down the URL length. But anyway, there are resources out there for being an ally of these people because inevitably... there is some support system in place for these characters of LGBTQ+ in your story. So PFLAG, PFLAG, I believe is just how they do it.
Right.
It's pflag.org/allies. They've got a bunch of different articles there.
Yes.
Along with the Human Rights Campaign, their main website is hrc.org.
Nice.
Also, there was a youth-oriented one that I came across in searching for this. So for younger listeners, we'll have this from engage.youth.gov.
Right.
It's all going to be in the description, don't worry.
Yes. And this is all good stuff. So
yeah. There are also resources for your characters about the coming out process.
Right. Okay.
So it will inform you how to write them, the struggles that they're facing at that brink of how do they announce it? Do they want to announce it? All those things. We'll have a link for that. There is also a fairly well-known project called the Trevor Project page. And if you go to the Trevor Project's main website and they have a top ribbon that has like resources, you can click on Support Center and there is a free downloadable PDF guide.
Nice.
So go ahead and take a look at that. Also, there are plenty of advocacy groups for the queer community, like PFLAG, GLAD with an extra
2
A,
A's, yes.
and plenty more. Regarding gender identity struggles, while there aren't as many advocacy groups that I found like readily available, the HRC does have resources on this at their webpage as well.
Right.
So if you're interested to find out more to make sure you're doing these characters the justice they deserve, go check them out.
Yes, and also look for your own too if you need more too, I think. So these are just the ones we recommend too. But that's it for this week. A huge thank you to all our patrons so far.
Yes, thank you very much for your support. It means the world to us.
Yes, contact us at mattd@matthedoncreator.com for any general questions to either co-host. Specify David or Donald for which one.
That'd be great. I mean, if you're talking about paleo bites, it probably isn't me. But
one of these days I'll get you on.
I keep dragging my feet on it just because. No.
Well, I got you on the Patreon. I'm halfway there.
Halfway home.
Got you on 3 Patreon episodes.
That's true. So go to Patreon, find out more, and you can actually hear me on Paleo Bites.
Yeah, and speaking of Patreons, patreon.com/MatthewDonald. You can also find some bonus content for this.
That's true. We have a little bit of the Ritwit stuff there, too.
I'm trying to work on more, okay? It's not as easy as with Paleo Bites. There's not as much to talk about anyways. Follow me at MatthewDonald on Facebook, at MatthewDonald64 on Twitter, and MatthewDonald64 on Instagram. Why 64? Because this episode... episode 128.
Oh, there you go.
Is divided by 2.
Oh, yeah, perfect.
See, 2 is the average number of times I fart per day, you see.
Oh, okay. Wow. Why are we hearing this?
Except for the last January 6th, which I farted 4 times.
What?
And then January 6th is 1.
Oh, my God.
Is 1 to 6.
No.
And 1 6, AA 16.
No.
And 16 times 4 farts is 64. It's all connected.
Yeah, you had this plan all along. Right.
It's all connected. Oh, that's the first one today. Ready for number 2?
Oh, my gosh. Please give it like a couple hours yet. Thanks for listening to The Ritwit, the show where us two twits have twitted ourselves out about gender, identity, and sexuality, inclusivity.
God, these 64 jokes are really going to clash. I have only myself to blame. The tone, man.
As long as you acknowledge that, we're okay.
I'm Matt Donald.
I'm Matt David. We'll see you next week with a different set on a different subset of people and including them.
Yes.
See you then.
Bye.
Keep reading.
Keep reading. And wash your hands. Get a vaccine.
The Read
You know, I've noticed we've sold a lot of products in these ads that take away the creative agency from writers and have a soulless machine pop it out instead, discouraging people from putting actual time and effort into their projects and making them expect quick, unearned results.
Yes. And
And it's great! I love it! Writing is easy now!